Good morning. Welcome to this SVG Europe Sports OTT Forum special session with Facebook's Anna Chanduvi. My name is Will Strauss. I am an editor at SVG Europe. I'll be your light and guide for the next half an hour or so as we talk about all things sport and Facebook. Hi, Anna. Thanks for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Hi there. Thank you for having me. I'm very glad to be here.
Fantastic, especially on a sunny day. It's great. Sorry to bring you indoors. Let me tell you a bit more about Anna. Anna manages sports media partnerships for Facebook across the EMEA region. She helps sports broadcasters use Facebook and Instagram to drive commercial objectives for their free-to-air, pay TV, digital-born or linear broadcasting businesses. Prior to joining Facebook, Anna was managing content strategy and rights acquisition for beIN Sports around the world. Having been at the forefront of sports media trends, Anna enjoys passing on her knowledge now to students as a part-time professor of sports media at the Football Business Academy, and also does guest lectures at universities such as Loughborough and Birkbeck. She's very passionate about advancing gender equality in the sports industry and is the founder of the WBR Network, a digital-first production company sharing stories of women breaking records in sport. It's great to have Anna with us. Anna, one of the things I really want to talk about is how publishers, and by publishers, that could be a federation, a league, or a club, or a sports broadcaster, or an OTT, or a streaming provider, how they can best work with or make use of Facebook. So let's start with what you're seeing. What are sports media companies doing to drive their KPIs and get success using Facebook?
Yeah, of course. And thank you so much for that kind introduction. And yeah, I think to your question around what sports media are doing to drive success across the platform. And like you mentioned, it's not only media. We work with all types of publishers across the region and all different sporting verticals across the industry. And ultimately, it's two things that I really want to highlight that we're seeing that are helping publishers achieve any level of success. Is the first thing is really understanding and being very deliberate about their own goals and objectives, for them to really know what it is they're trying to achieve across the platform. And then the second thing is to understand how that platform works and what are the key levers of success that need to be taken into consideration when trying to execute any type of strategy. To be more bit specific, Facebook is the world's biggest sporting community. We have over 700 million sport fans on Facebook platform, 400 million on Instagram. That is where the next generation of fans are interacting, sharing content, discovering new fandom, discovering new teams to follow, and connecting with like-minded fans and individuals. So that represents a huge opportunity for any publisher to develop an audience, build that audience, engage that audience, make them loyal customers, members of their fan groups, viewers of their content. And then ultimately, that gives you a pool of people that you can monetize or activate. And monetization, for clubs could be driving ticket sales or merchandising revenue. For media, I saw some broadcasters attending in the session, driving efficient OTT conversions, reactivating churned subscribers by using a mix of our paid advertising tools also. But it always starts with community and the audience ultimately that you're trying to drive and trying to build, because that then gives you a number of different options to monetize and to drive success. And we at a high level, we as a team, we work with a number of different publishers and help them through their community develop a number of monetization options. And primarily at the moment, this is through video. So by posting a lot of video content and understanding the audience behaviors around that video gives you important learnings and data points to then form into a strategy that you can test and learn on platform. And without taking up too much time with this question, because I know there's a couple more coming, we see the publishers that have this test and learn mentality underpinned by a clear idea of what their goals and objectives are, succeed. So that kind of at a high level is how we're seeing a number of different publishers activate across the platform, and how they're using the opportunity that Facebook and Instagram present.
Thank you. That's great. And by the way, don't forget, people out there, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. We'd love to hear from you about anything Anna's talking about, or anything to do with her career, for example, women's sports, anything like that. We're very happy to bring those subjects into the conversation. One thing I have to ask you about, it would be foolhardy of me not to mention it, is the coronavirus pandemic. I'm only laughing because that's the only thing we've talked about for 2 months. Has anything changed as a result of COVID-19? Have you noticed any particular trends because of lockdown or because of the pandemic?
Yeah, so it's a very unfortunate, with COVID happening and live sport. So for us as a team, our number one objective was always to support our partners, support vulnerable groups across our platforms. We announced a number of grants to small businesses, a lot of efforts to help improve monetization capabilities. But from a platform perspective, we've seen a number of user behavior trends, increase in watch time across the board, time spent on the platform, but particularly around live content. We're really seeing people rallying around live, engaging with live, both on Instagram and on Facebook, and really looking for that community experience within live. As we all know, working in sports, nothing brings people together like that live event. And unfortunately, without any live sports, we have seen publishers get more creative with the types of lives that they do, and actually increase the output of live content, whether that's re-airing archived matches, like a lot of clubs have done, a lot of broadcasters have done as well. DAZN, especially in Germany, has been airing weekly archive matches of Champions League games. A lot of teams have been doing that as well. So really kind of looking at driving community through live. We've also seen an increase in messaging, 50% in the top affected countries hit by COVID, and group calling as well, which to no surprise happened as people had to self-isolate, were away from their loved ones. We've seen a group calling increase by plus 1,000%. So all of those different trends tell us a couple things. The first one is people are looking to connect with each other. They're looking for human connections, and they're using our tools and our products in order to do so. But secondly, they're looking for a connection around a common interest, and live is a great way to create that common interest and bring those fans and audiences together when they are actively seeking out that type of experience. So those are some of the high level trends. We've also seen, to give a bit more of a concrete example, is like publishers being very deliberate in their content strategy. And arguably COVID has made everyone be more creative, without any live sport. As a broadcaster that traditionally has relied on an influx of content to be able to put out a certain number of content, now has to get more creative and balance remote production with a lack of that content stream that came from the live. So we're seeing now, again, just to mention, FC Barcelona starting to do a weekly live Q&A series with their, can you still see? Yeah, perfect. For a second, thought I froze.
No, we're all good. We're all good.
Yeah, so we've seen them do weekly live Q&As with their star athletes, but they've also brought in star fans. I don't know if you guys have watched Money Heist. If you haven't, definitely binge it. I binged it in like the first 2 weeks of lockdown, but they got in Moscow from Money Heist into one of their Q&As, and fans really, really responded well to that. And by doing that on a weekly basis, they were able to build an audience over time that knew, okay, next week there's going to be a live Q&A. I'm going to make sure I'm going to tune in. But by bringing in the actor from Money Heist, they're able to tap into his fan base and his audience also. And then off the back of that, they now had a product, that Q&A series, that they were able to sell on for sponsorship. So they've gotten Rakuten as a sponsor of their live Q&A. So that kind of goes back to the initial point, how I spoke about publishers driving their goals and objectives forward, it always starts with audience first, engaging them, building a repetitive habit and intention to view, which then gives you a number of different monetization opportunities. So that probably is one of the biggest trends we've seen happen in COVID. And then there's a number of different examples as well. We've seen clubs also, just to mention another club example, Inter Milan do a number of successful fundraisers. They've actually broken the record of a fundraiser they ran where they generated plus £100,000 in revenue from any club on our platform so far. So they did a fundraiser, promoted it through the players, through the swipe up function on Instagram to help their local community in their fights against COVID disease. So we've just seen people, really hone in on that community element, bringing people together, and we strongly believe that a lot of those trends are gonna stay even post COVID.
Thank you. A question just come in actually, which is linked to the one I was going to ask. So there's some of the things you mentioned there, specifically about COVID-19. I think some of them are still going to be relevant post lockdown and post pandemic. And I'm particularly keen to go deep on some of these best practices that maybe you could share. So the secrets of working with Facebook and a best practice level, specifically with live content. The question that came through was about better creative live content. That's, as we've said, that's key to the sports broadcasting industry. So have you got any best practice as far as creating creative live content is concerned?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think when you're thinking about Facebook and the opportunities around Facebook and how to create an engaging content strategy, it's so important to always ask yourself, am I driving community? And if yes, how? How can this piece of content bring people together and give them a special, something special essentially in these times of, in these unprecedented times without any live sport? So some of the things that we've really seen work exceptionally well on live is being very deliberate and not just going live for the sake of live, is having a pre-live strategy, whether that's, driving a tune in a week in advance or a couple of hours, but really letting your audience know why you're going live and what they can expect from engaging in your live. Are you going to be doing workout videos? And if yes, what type of videos and how can they be involved? Or are you re-airing an archived game live? And if yes, why is that game important for them? And driving that appetite and that almost FOMO feeling around why they should come in and consume your content is super important. We've seen a number of publishers do that through pre-game or pre-live studio shows, or they went and did a quick Q&A with an athlete, or re-aired some archived content to set the scene for why this match is important, whether it's archive or not. And then the second thing is having a strategy during the live. That is when your audience is the hottest and the most engaged and most likely to listen to whatever you're telling them ultimately, So looking at integrating live polling, Q&A is bringing people into that conversation. And again, driving that community feeling is making someone at home not feel like they're watching by themselves ultimately, is the kind of, is what you should be aiming to do. And just really not being afraid to get into the comments, pin fan comments as well to show fans, hey, there's a conversation happening around this live right now. Why don't you tune in and join us? And then at the end of the live is thinking of your post-live strategies, potentially taking snippets of that live and distributing them across the different surfaces that you're managing. Or going back and pulling out some exciting fan comments and highlighting those and sharing those with other fans is not just, so essentially my point is like, don't just go live and then forget about it and move on, is really kind of create a continuous experience across your Facebook channel on the platforms. And it's the same with Instagram, is really being engaged with your audience. And one of the things that I would want to mention that we've seen work really, really well in driving community, and you can always, as a publisher, do that on the side your live strategy, of any content strategy, is Facebook groups, which is the pinnacle of community and bringing people together in a closed environment that is safe, that you can moderate, but ultimately is a space that you're creating for your fans and for your audiences. We've seen the number of Facebook groups just skyrocket also since COVID and the lockdown happened. And we've seen also, just to name a couple of examples, groups drive incredible KPIs and business results, especially for BT Sport. They created a group for boxing fans in the UK outside of their, around their boxing rights. And as a result, they've seen that group not only grow extremely quickly, but also 80% of the content in that group is generated by fans, not by group admins, which just shows it's the perfect place for not only to get user-generated content, but for your fans to engage with each other in a space that is closed and protective and for them. And as a result, viewership on BT Sports video has increased. So people that are in the group are more likely, twice as likely, to consume BT Sports videos than someone who's a fan of the page but not in the group. So again, when you're looking at driving watch time, it's proven that people that are engaged and are loyal to you, they're more likely to watch for longer and engage more. And we've seen that the same type of trends and the same stats across a number of different groups. Same with the Rugby World Cup. We're just in the process of publishing a case study where we've seen, the Rugby Federation create a Rugby World Cup group around their event that got over 30,000 members within the first couple weeks. And same situation, people that are a fan of the group are twice as likely to watch Rugby Federation videos than someone who's not in the group but just a fan of the page. Again, long answer, but I'm just trying to give as many examples for people watching.
And you've name dropped, and I was going to ask you to name drop, and you did a very good job there. There was a huge clang when the names were dropped. You mentioned engagement. I think we should take some questions. There are some questions lined up, and as you're talking about commenting and engaging people, let's engage the audience here as well. There's a couple about rights. It's a perennial question for Facebook, but I'm sure you'll have a good answer for this. So. Summary being, will Facebook take a proactive approach on sports rights acquisitions in the future? Their point being, it seems that the strategy does move as the platform develops. So the question is, will it take a proactive approach on sports rights acquisitions?
I can safely answer that with not in the near future, not that I've been made aware, not that I've been told. That's not our priority as a platform. We are focusing on helping partners drive sustainable value across Facebook. Our value proposition to partners is essentially audience development. And through that audience development, we then offer a number of monetization capabilities that, depending on your business model, you can take advantage of. Another stat that I want to mention is that over 95% of sports content, live content, any content on Facebook is non-funded. So that is content that exists on the platform today because publishers know they can drive their KPIs, their business goals and objectives forward. Someone like DAZN that has grown incredibly fast in the last couple of years, extremely aggressive subscriber acquisition targets off the back of the heavy investments they've done into sporting rights. They use Facebook and Instagram and the community they've built on our platforms, and they've done a great job in doing so to drive more efficient conversions to their OTT business. They know that by balancing the right content mix between their O&O and the platform, they're able to build and attract new users to their page that they can then activate and retarget for subscription purposes. And they've really seen incredibly efficient business results. And it's the same with the Premier League clubs. We've recently posted some stats around the top 20 clubs that since the lockdown, we've seen them increase their branded content posts and their output on Facebook by plus 44% and on Instagram by plus 100 and almost 150%. So it just shows that there's now the content on our platforms, the community that they've built is now is an asset that they can ultimately package and then monetize through a new revenue stream that previously wouldn't have been available to them. So these are exactly the type of opportunities that we as a team are focused on building. And ultimately we win if our partners win, and going to a bidding war on rights is just not sustainable in this climate, doesn't really fit to our business models as a tech company. So our focus is really on offering the best value and service to partners that we can. Absolutely.
Thank you for that. Another question. You mentioned some statistics, but let's talk about data. Facebook's big on data. You have a lot of it. A friend of the show, Lise Kosimi, who works as our external head of SVG Europe Women, was asking whether, with the data you have, whether Facebook is capable of making a difference between men and women watching. I guess that's to do with targeting, I would have thought. But are you able to sort of segment in that sort of way when it's with sports?
Yeah. So that's one of the things that, and I'm glad you guys are asking this, is because it's such an important, data is kind of the hot topic and the hot word in the last couple of years, making sure you have the right data around your customers' viewing behaviors, what they're consuming, and how to ultimately drive an action from the audience that you've built are key strategies that ultimately rely on data. We as a company, we've heavily invested in creating as much data gathering opportunities and services to partners, and they're all free and anyone can access them today in order to ultimately get different analytics and insights around the content and how the audience is engaging with that content. So to be more specific, we've launched Creator Studio that every publisher has access to, that lets you see not only a demographical breakdown about your audience, so men versus females, age groups, where they're watching from, the language that they're watching in, but also that lets you look at viewing trends in a much more comprehensive and holistic way. Where are your views coming from? Was it from a share? Was it a referral? But then how long are people watching for? Is it 1 minute? Is it 3 seconds? And week on week retention. So looking at 1 minute views on a week on week basis. So from the people that watched your content for 1 minute last week, how many came back the following week? And not only that, what other type of content are they watching? So these are all questions that we can now answer through Creator Studio. So you can analyze your most engaged and loyal audience, but you can also see the other type of content that they're engaging with and they're consuming. And these are all crucial learnings that ultimately will help publishers continue to evolve their content strategy and their output. The second one that I want to name drop is CrowdTangle. If you think of Creator Studio as internal data analysis and looking at your audience and viewing behavior trends, CrowdTangle is more looking at the ecosystem and will allow you to benchmark against competitors, against other publishers in other industries. If you want to know how you compare to an entertainment publisher, or an athlete, or a celebrity, you can do that in Creator Studio as well. So there's a number of different ways for you to get an understanding of not only your own performance, but where you stand in the ecosystem that will help you make smarter and better decisions around programming. And just to mention is not only around programming, but when we go back to that branded content example, and if you're looking at, okay, I've got all these creative assets, I've built an audience, I'm now ready to try to attract a brand to sponsor my content, to reach the audience that I've built on the platforms. You can use Creator Studio to really build some compelling packages, looking at 3-second view growth over time, or loyalty metrics that now a lot of brands are looking for. It's so much more around that deep engagement and that community around your content than I would say vanity metrics that would have been the key driver historically.
Absolutely. Let's stick with the gender theme. There's a couple of questions here, which one is about Facebook Watch. and has that helped the volume of women's sports that's available? Another one is whether the coronavirus might have an adverse effect on the amount of women's sports being shown, either on Facebook or even more broadly on television. I wonder if you had an opinion on either of those two points of view.
Yeah, I think on the first one, whether Facebook Watch has helped drive women's sports, on a personal level, I want to say yes, and 100% definitely. Facebook Watch doesn't only help build communities and bring people closer together. It allows publishers to develop new communities as well. So it's, another name drop an example, Copa 90, for example, they created a Facebook group for women's football fans to engage those around the Women's World Cup last year. Also, Facebook Watch is free. Anyone can access it. Democratizes the sporting consumption. So for you as a fan, it is so, by going onto the platform and consuming content, given the discoverability and the nature of the platform and how it surfaces content, it's easy for you to then discover new content or new athletes or new clubs to follow, which again is a positive thing for niche sports and women's sports particularly. We also see the average female, there are more females using Facebook worldwide. We also see females engage more on content in general across both Facebook and Instagram, and especially across a lot of sports. We are seeing more or less equal female to male engagement. Of course, it depends on the event and when it's happening, but from a personal level, I've seen a lot of positive growth, which is also very, very important to me. And going forward, the opportunities that COVID presents, or the effect of COVID on women's football, and it's quite unfortunate that, it's inevitable a lot of funding is going to be pulled from sport in general. A lot of budgets are going to have to be shifted. A lot of revenue streams are going to have to be reinvented. There's going to be a lot of change to the sporting world, especially the commercial landscape, in the next 12 months. Post-COVID and as live sports starts coming back. And it's the perfect opportunity for any niche sport or women's sports, which I would consider niche sport, to build their audience across the platform. As I mentioned, we have 700 million fans on Facebook. So by really committing to creating a community around your fans, telling stories around your athletes, the clubs, setting the context around why this game or why this live is important, why someone who potentially would have not been a fan before should come in and tune in. All those little details, in the caption, when you go live, in the scheduling of your content strategy are so important. And by committing to that, you will see growth over time, and that growth will then present monetization and sponsorship opportunities that will help ultimately drive commercial value of the sport overall. So I'm quite excited to see how, and to work with a lot of those niche sports to help them build their audience, but also commercial strategies across the platforms.
Thank you. That actually answers another question that came through about what role could Facebook play in changing this, and you've actually given that answer within that question. That's great. So thank you very much for that. Another question, a slight change of tact, which was asking whether traditional broadcasters, the way they use Facebook is different from the way, say, an OTT provider might use Facebook, and rather temptingly says, who is doing the better job?
For me, coming from a traditional broadcast world, I think that was one of my first questions I asked in my interview as well. But from now having had this job for almost 2 years and working across free-to-air, traditional and digital broadcasters, there really is no direct answer. And the question of success and who's doing well is, again, so subjective. It really depends how you define success. There's some publishers that say, driving X subscribers to our OTT, that is success. For another publisher, it might say, we don't really have monetization targets. We just want to focus on building an audience. on the platform, and our goal is to get X many views and X many members in our group and our community. So that kind of is the caveat that I want to highlight. We've really seen a number of different definitions of success and partners achieving those on the platform. But we've seen digital publishers be incredibly creative, and most of them don't have sport rights. So they have to think about, how they story tell around an event in a way that doesn't rely on live rights. Whereas broadcasters, of course, they've got access to highlights, and through putting them on the platform, they've had to be much more creative around how do we put highlights and games on the platform in a way that is authentic to our brand as this broadcaster. We don't just want to dump a bunch of highlights on there, but we really want these highlights to reflect who we are. We want that experience still to be a Sky Sports experience or a beIN Sports experience or Eurosport, whoever. And ultimately that is developing that two-way communication channel between their audience. So we've seen both do incredibly well, develop different tactics, but there's some good success stories across the board.
Thank you very much. We're coming to the end now, guys, but if you've got any more questions, please use the Q&A tool. Somebody just posted my next question, so I'm going to steal that. The basic gist of it is, will the pandemic change the way broadcasters view Facebook and use it to reach viewers in the future? And will it change it permanently? Which is kind of what my question was going to be about the future. So what's the long-term impact and also long-term opportunities of what we've been through?
So I think the answer would be for sure. Our goal is to help partners build long-term sustainable value. That is a strategy that will help them drive success on the long term, which is why, again, we're not just in the game of here's cash for your content, see you later. Like, we really want to help them develop a sponsorship business, to really help develop an audience, to drive conversions, to generate significant revenue through ad breaks, which is currently available on Facebook for every single person, for every publisher that drives a certain number of views per month. So our goal is that sustainability is the word that I want to highlight. So the opportunities that exist going forward and some of the trends that we've seen that we would no doubt will see growing, especially as next year looks like a very busy sporting year for sport, is branded content. We've just released the stat with Premier League clubs increasing their branded content output and offerings. We've seen media do that as well on a case-by-case basis. And branded content, especially for media, is something that, a lot of the partners weren't necessarily doing, especially the traditional broadcasters. They were selling linear advertising and they were set in their workflows, whereas a lot of them are now seeing, okay, we can actually bundle in our digital audiences and the community we've built on these platforms into our linear advertising packages and looking at getting more revenue out of our assets and out of our content overall. Another trend that we will see beyond COVID as well is, and we didn't actually talk about much today, is athletes. We've seen consumption and engagement on athlete content grow exponentially, and we expect that to continue as athletes start using the platforms more, telling their own story, becoming their own media channels in essence as well.
Thank you very much. There's a question here. Unfortunately, I don't quite understand. Maybe you can help translate it for me. So there's Facebook Messenger Room. Is that obviously that must mean something to you. It doesn't mean anything to me, unfortunately. So the question is, any specific plans with Facebook Messenger Room for sport and sport OTT specifically?
That's a good question. In the last couple of months, I'm actually personally struggling to keep up with all the things we're launching. We launched Messenger Rooms.
Well, I've got no chance to never.
Facebook Shopping, commerce plans for Instagram, live producer, live donations. So the list is endless. Our product team has been working around the clock 24/7 to really ship products that help publishers drive value from our platforms. Messenger Rooms is one of those. It was pretty much, I'm amazed at how quickly it was developed off the back of the increase in messaging, group video calling. We realized there's a demand for, people using our platform to connect with each other in a more frictionless way, but in a way that is meaningful and authentic. So no specific plans yet for sport, other than I would love to see a lot of publishers start using that in a creative way. And hopefully next time we chat, I'll be able to talk about some specific use cases and case studies that I've seen. But we've spoken to a number of publishers that are looking at using this feature in a similar way, like watch parties, which ultimately allows people to come together in a live environment, discuss, debate. So I think it's just a matter of time before we start seeing some good use cases for sports.
Lovely, thank you very much. I need to research messenger rooms then, by all accounts. Anna, before I let you go, and we're very grateful for you giving up your time today, is there anything else that you wanted to mention as far as Facebook and the sports market is concerned?
Yeah, I would just probably just highlight the kind of publishers to rethink what their goals and objectives are going forward, and being really deliberate around those, and thinking, if our goal is to develop an audience, what are the different tools and products that we can use to do that? Groups, going live, interactions on live. If it's monetization, look at developing a proposal or package around your content. If it's generating ad break revenue, look at look at publishing more +3-minute longer form content on Facebook. So whatever your goal is will determine your strategy. But at the bottom of that is really think about community and making people come back to watch your content. Driving intentional viewing behavior and loyalty are incredible signals that you want to make sure you drive and that you send to the platform in order to optimize for success. So in order to get the best possible distribution across the platforms is really driving those KPIs, the loyalty, making sure people intentionally seek out your content is going to help you set up for success.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And can I thank you? I'm going to thank you on behalf of all the women in the industry. I've been asked to thank you on behalf of all the women in the industry who regard you as a role model, certainly for the next generation. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. From my point of view, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been very interesting. I've very much enjoyed your company. I'm sure the audience have too. If just before I let you go, to everybody that's listening, there'll be a short survey may pop up on your screen. If you wouldn't mind filling it in, letting us know what we've done well, what we could perhaps do better, I'd really appreciate that. But for now, Anna Chanduvi, thank you very much for your time. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and speak soon. Bye.